Oh, we got to start by pouring one out. For Lord Stefan Darkland, my name is Alden Diaz, and welcome to Casterly Talk, a brand new episode. As Ken used to say, from the lands of always winter to the southernmost point of Dorne. Well, this time I think we're going to go probably from the haunted brotherly love of Harrenhal all the way to the random beach area where Seasmoke finally found his brand new writer. It's a big week for Seasmoke, big week for Daemon, big week for Rhaenyra and Mysaria. And there's so much to talk about, and I'm so glad to be here with all of you. Welcome, 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 welcome. Will Andy be in armor? We will find out. We will find out when our good friend Andy calls in. Nikki will be joining us a little bit later. Got the call out to Andres. We'll see if Andres drops by. As always, keeping it casual this season. Again, welcome to Casually Talk. I'm your host, Alden Diaz. Like I said, we got him. We got busy. And with that, I will say, I don't have a brother, and I don't have really a haunted house to walk through. My mom and my dead wives, like no one's popping out at me. But every now and then, if you listen close enough, people do pop out at you. Such as our friend Andy. Andy is here from the haunted halls of your office. It doesn't seem that haunted. Seems fine.
No, not that haunted.
No, but you're rocking your Team Black garb with the Her Universe Rhaenyra, which is just peak.
I got Blackfire on, Dark Sister on the one ear. I got the Targaryen family crest earring on the other.
Hell yeah,
they're very cool.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, I'm coming in. I feel like a little bit like low energy, but it's mostly because I think this might potentially be my favorite of the season. It's hard to say. I'm sure I'll say that 2 more times now. But I'm just like, I'm processing so much. I both got exactly what I wanted and what we've all asked for as a team, and with obviously Patty coming back, not just for one scene, but two.
But two scenes. Patty back was
incredible. There are other huge things that we're going to talk about. For example, I will off air. I had a conversation with our friend Edgar, who's called in before. We might call in again. And I said, probably 3 episodes ago, I said, what you think that, it would be interesting if Rhaenyra and Mysaria became a thing because, this reason and this reason and this reason, and we'll talk about it. And he goes, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Lo and behold, here we are. Not quite Pride Month anymore. You're a little late, HBO, but finally, after a season and a half,
Rhaenyra Targaryen girl kisser.
Yeah, it is no longer subtext. It is now text. And very happy about that for several different reasons. I think both of their performances are immaculate. I think this was the first time that I think that the story truly endeared us, not just to Alicent herself, but to House Hightower, with that emotional scene with Gwaine.
That was really good.
Darren, yeah, it was beautiful stuff. We're gonna be Emma Darcy masterclass, absolutely. Will McLean, thank you for watching.
I gotta mention that it's hilarious that Rhaenyra makes out with the girl, and then the preview for next week's episode is Alicent in an all-white dress, like walking out into a lake. The most dramatic lesbian yearning in the world.
I forgot about that shot from the teasers, like the very early teaser of the season. 100%. Like Olivia Cook,
Olivia
Cook, Alicent Hightower, and maybe Olivia Cook. Who knows? I'm sure they had some funny texts about this, and we'll hear about it in postseason press. But yeah, that was incredible. Like I said last week, I don't take a lot of notes, but I do some no-look scribbles just so I don't forget anything. And this time I drew a line through the note card just so I could organize the scribbles at least a little bit. Everybody who's watching, thanks so much. Someone call a U-Haul. Hilarious. I understand that reference. And now here we are. Other people are going to be joining us. Nikki will join us later. As always, guest rights. I want you to decide which of the two overarching factions we're going to be talking about, although it gets a little looser over time because there's a lot of small folk discussion here too, and an episode called Small Folk.
I mean, that's so tough to say because I really loved that Gwaine scene, but at the same time, like Team Black was so many interesting things happen. Yeah, we got Corlys's first time on the council. We got an attempt at claiming a dragon, which didn't go well. So, like, yeah, I guess let's say Team Black. There's so much going on there.
Yeah, let's start with an esteemed member of the Targaryen Velaryon family, Seasmoke Velaryon, who decided that he was going to, I don't know, do it for the lulz, get all the way down with the saddle as if he was going to let him, and then nah, he did not pass the vibe check, which I like. I mean, it is funny, and obviously I'm joking about it, but when you engage with Seasmoke's point of view, since these are intelligent characters, it's like, you know, whether Laenor did die in battle and everything, we're assuming there's that moment of, like, you know, maybe he's lonely, that sort of, we clocked it. Although there's a second read on that now of maybe that's about them and an early sort of, maybe you're lonely. We'll talk about that too when we get to their intimate moment.
Yeah.
But for Seasmoke, oh, perfect timing. Let me just say real quick, I got to bring in Seasmoke's biggest fan.
Oh, yes.
So glad you're here right for what I was about to talk about him. So Andres is here from First Cut and Geese of Color, and of course Andy from Genders Queers Buccaneers.
What's up, Andy?
Good to see you again, Andres.
Good to see you, man.
My friends, Seasmoke, I was saying, Andres, like, a little bit like it comes off like, you know, am I going to do it for the lulz? Like, let this guy think he's got a chance. But I also think that there is, in a really animalistic way and an intelligent bond, friendships way, there was a little bit of a vibe check. Like, maybe Seasmoke, because we know Seasmoke's lonely. So, like, maybe Seasmoke was like, oh, yeah, like, I'll let him. And then the closer he got, it just, no. I don't think it was like Seasmoke playing with food. I think it was just like the dragon has to think about it as much as a person has to think about it.
Yeah, it also could be, I mean, we saw him scoping out Addam beforehand, right? So maybe that was also in the back of his head where he's like, can I give this guy a shot? And he's like, what about that other guy? I remember seeing him and feeling a connection to him. I feel like that guy is more what I'm vibing with. And then that's why he second guessed it. And that's why he immediately went back to Addam right away after that.
Yeah, which I love. Andy, how did you feel about the build up to this claim? Obviously we got some more beautiful, like, Valyrian traditional song and everything that, you know, they do to endear you to Darkland. Like, you know, whether you know it's not going to work out or not because of the book lore and stuff, like, even if you know nothing, you want this guy to succeed. He was being really kind and really humble about it, but
I mean, he's a good dude. Like, he is a noble knight. He was the guy who snuck Rhaenyra into the city. House Darkland, they have 7 shields on their family sigil for the 7 members of House Darkland who have become Kingsguard. We saw his uncle or brother tell Kristen Cole, like, you don't deserve to wear the white. So, like, we like House Darkland. They're as good and true knights as you can get. And the fact that Seasmoke was like, yeah, but you're not my rider.
No.
Like, it is a bummer. It is also a little funny.
Oh, it is.
That Seasmoke was like, okay, yeah, let me, like, kind of go down. And then, like, last second, like, actually, no, I really like that other guy. I am still worried to be like an uber nerd about, like, the lore implications of, like, I want to know what's going on with Laenor. But that's also like, I don't need that answered right now. I can hope that within the next episode with the Rhaenyra confrontation, that is apparently coming, that I'll maybe get my lore answer there.
We're gonna take Big G's question in a second about Laenor, but I did want to throw in, to add to the comedy side of it, the unintentional dark comedy, even in Rhaenyra's pitch before he takes the knee and reaffirms his vows and talks about why he's there and what it means to serve. The fact that her pitch is like, you know, your grandmother's grandmother was a princess. It's like, not even grandma. It's like, Rhaenyra, you're not making me feel better with this. Like, you just picked his great grandma. Like, this is a little bit of a reach. But Big G's point here, if Seasmoke taking a new rider means that Laenor's actually dead, why didn't they actually kill him last season? And, you know, some of my earliest really in-depth conversations with you, Andy, outside of, just like Star Wars and like,
Yeah.
kind of knowing each other, were about this. And I think part of this is real world. I mean, like, this is a significantly more diverse writer's room than Game of Thrones had. And it's a different world than 2009 when that show started getting developed. And our earliest conversations were, can we avoid the Laenor, is this gay character who can't live his truth and then immediately gets offed for plot? And how, we also talked about Joffrey, who does get murdered, but is not why he gets murdered, and how that line and the bury your gays trope sort of happens and plays out across media. So if you want to start with this one and talk sort of about like the value of changing the Laenor ending, even if he dies, you've said, like, I know you've said on previous episodes of this show, just to catch up the audience, like, your issue is not with him being dead. It's just better and more hopeful, like dying at sea, doing what you love, than dying this way.
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons why it's better to have it this way than for him to have died last season. And I think one key feature is that it plays with the unreliable narrator aspect of the source material. Mm-hmm. And I think it let the audience know that, like, oh, the Maesters don't have everything right. And, like, obviously the point of Fire and Blood, the book, is that the Maesters are all arguing about who's right and who's wrong. And they're admitting, like, we actually don't know what happened here and stuff like that. So for the show to kind of cue the audience in, especially the book readers, like, oh, we're going to be playing with a little stuff and we have some surprises for you, I think is really cool. I think the next aspect is that from like a queer perspective, having him get murdered by his lover in like a senseless spat is, I don't know. It's kind of a bummer for a franchise that hasn't always done the best with their gay representation, and having him like get to escape and have a bunch of years of happiness going on cool nautical adventures, I think is rad as hell. And like, sometimes people don't get clean exits from your life. Like, if he dies at sea, or if he dies in a cool pirate battle, buckling some swashes, and like Rhaenyra doesn't ever find out exactly what happened, like, there's a beautiful tragedy to it there that is, I think, more narratively fulfilling and dare I say romantic in the like legendary sense, not like romantic
like
in like the
lowercase r romance.
There's like a romance to that. It feels like a fucking Mumford and Sons song or something.
Yeah, and also to that point, like, I just coincidentally, it came up on my Instagram, like people will just post scenes or whatever, and it was them talking where Laenor was like, he's doubting himself, and I'm sorry that I couldn't be this, and I wish the gods didn't make me this way. And Rhaenyra cuts him off and is like, you're great, man. Like, you're a wonderful, kind man, and reaffirms that they have love. Whether it could be romantic that's just the way that life went. Like, he that's just not who Laenor is. And Rhaenyra always affirmed that, always was fine with their differing paths, even though they were married, her with Harwin and Laenor with, I think, several partners, but then finally the partner that comes with them to Dragonstone. And that was never an issue for her. Yeah. And I think that that ending in season 1 for Laenor reaffirmed that too. Like, it showed that Rhaenyra wasn't just about words, that like, yeah, she was about to marry chaos and heavy metal, and like, she was going to go further down that path, but she wasn't going to make Laenor pay for that. Like, that's not, she wasn't actually going to do that. That's not in her. That like wanton cruelty is not in her nature. And
like, even if he dies, he got like one of the happiest endings out of anyone from Game of Thrones. So like, I still love it. I think it's still a great choice.
Yeah. Andres, where are you at sort of with Laenor and sort of the question mark killing off screen and how it pertains to everyone who's left behind? Because he doesn't get brought up as much as certain other parents, but there was that conversation about the two fathers, and like Strong is still such a big part of the story that we get more Harwin sort of influence peppered out, but Laenor was ultimately one of the only kind people. And so how does it make you feel as a fan of him and as a fan of Sea Smoke for his legacy to still hang over the season?
I have so many thoughts. I've made a couple videos about this because I do think it is complicated, right? Because you don't want to fall into this trope that we've seen so much, especially over the past 15, 20 years in media. But at the same time, it's like, how do you balance that with balancing the lore of a dragon rider, of Sea Smoke? As book readers, we know he latches on to Addam. How is that going to work out if Laenor is still alive? So the idea of killing him off screen to me feels good, but at the same time, I agree with Andy in that having confirmation of that is needed, in my opinion, because otherwise it just feels a little weird. It feels a little muddled, like not clear as far as what happened with Laenor. And even if I know this might be too much, but even if we cut to Laenor, I think that would have been something. To just see what he was doing and maybe even see his end. I don't know. Maybe it's just my need and desire to have this confirmed and to not have the lore switched up. But if they do have the lore switched up, to confirm it again, to say that or to show that Laenor is off doing something else. It's difficult because you do want to balance those things. And I had a couple issues with Laenor in season 1. But at the same time, I did feel like this is an opportunity in a character that, like Andy said, gets a good exit, gets a good goodbye. But at the same time, I still feel like it's complicated because of Rhaenys still thinking,
there's
that was his son. Like that's me, rubbed me the wrong way.
It's like you almost wish that when enough years went by that Rhaenyra would have been like,
just
all right,
tell her.
Can I tell you something? Like,
yeah,
can I
by the way, he's good. He's over there, but just don't worry about it.
So you see, we shaved his head, right? And then in the middle of the night, the tragedy of what's not said. And to your point, like, is it maybe too much to like have cut to him? Like, maybe, but there's the hanging and growing, like, Pentos is going to become part of the story that has been peppered throughout, not just with the Triarchy or Pentos and Free Cities and the whole area. Is Pentos one of the Free Cities? It is, right? So that counts. Yeah. So like there, it is like squares and rectangles. But yeah, so like the princes are going to go, the two youngest princes, and the relationship with Prince Reggio and like things. And so it's like, maybe like, hey, this boat that's coming that's gonna ferry them over. You could do something where it's like a ship captain's like, hey, we have a note for the queen, and it could be from Carl or who knows. In any case, looking here, I'm just here for Andy. I don't watch the Dragons. Andy, you've got shooters just out here.
I do got shooters.
What's up, just people that
I love you.
Well played by Rhaenyra with the food. Next week will be the title. Acknowledge me. Yeah, a little bit of a wrestling reference in there. Absolutely. I mean, we'll talk about that in terms of all the stuff after we finish up with a little bit of the Dragon Seed story. I thought the Dragon Seed, jokingly, even in the description for this video, it says 80s training style montage of different writers, and they're decompressing it, which they are, known to do in this show, and it's smart. I mean, there are key events that everybody that's read the text, which we're not going to spoil, go into, like, oh, when are they going to do this? What episode is this going to be? What episode is this going to be? Usually battle names, and spreading this out. We had the Darkland stuff and now the Addam stuff, and there will be others, and that's going to be a thing, but it's smart here. I thought the scene was really well played. I like that Sea Smoke got to be featured. There's also a lot of fan debate. I'm curious how you both feel as people that know it, especially you, Andres, as like dragons being like your favorite aspect of the mythology, specifically of who are Dany's baby's parent. And that's a whole thing. And just to summarize for everybody, let's just, for people watching, in the text, we don't know. In the we do question mark, but do.
Yeah.
And that would be Dreamfire is the implication. or at least was the implication that they ran with in season 1 a little bit. Correct? Is that what you're getting at, Andy? Is Dreamfire?
Yeah, it is very heavily implied that Dreamfire's eggs were stolen in a lesbian breakup.
That's right. That's right.
And the jilted lover went over to the Free Cities,
and
kind of
traded
set herself
them.
up, and
Right,
lived the rest of her
right.
days basically as like a merchant princess.
And so it seemed in season 1, based on the glimpse of Dreamfire in the pit, a lot of fans clocked that the design was very Drogon-esque. People said, there it is. That's Condal kind of telling us like, this is their dad or their mom. But then, and people get really mad about cast interviews. I do not expect the cast to know this stuff. Please don't hold them to task. Emma Darcy, I think, like offhandedly said that they thought it was Cyrax was the parent. I think that's just Emma Darcy mixing up dragon names. They're very busy. This is not their job to know. So we skip over that. But then we get to Sea Smoke. And Sea Smoke, we've seen several times, but this is the first like up close, the faces in camera, real look. And Sea Smoke also looks a lot like Dany's kids. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe what they're doing visually, because people in season 1 were like, well, they're just reusing an asset because it's cheap. And that might be true for season 1. But now it feels like, are we establishing, and I'll throw it to you, Andres, are we establishing in the same way that dogs have breeds, that there is a dragon breed consistency in the show version?
If I'm being honest, I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, it could be, and obviously, I feel like a lot of people have already
Are they from
said
the same clutch? That could be.
Yeah. But at the same time, I just don't know. I don't know, if I'm being honest. I don't know if there was that much thought going into it as far as like the look of Sea Smoke.
Yeah, who knows? It feels like there's like a default dragon look from the visual effects point of view. There's probably, is this a default dragon or a special one? Default. All right, and then like Caraxes has to look different. Vhagar has to look different. Cyrax and Sunfire have to look different. And maybe, and I know that I was talking to Edgar about it, and from Where Heartbreak Feels Good podcast, and Edgar was saying that there's a huge, I don't know if it's fan theory, but a fan desire for when the Conquest show that is in early development gets made, that Balerion, when we finally see Balerion, would look like this breed, thus creating a cool connectivity from the beginning to the end. Anyway, it just got so nerdy in here. I'm sweating.
I feel like the details for specific dragons for specific characters, Caraxes, like you named them all. Those are important when it comes to someone like Sea Smoke. It feels like it's very much, in my opinion, I don't know, I might be wrong. I just kind of feel like they were just like, let's throw in. He looks kind of like Drogon. With no intention behind it. But that's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
I think two things to keep in mind is, thing one, Gurm has never done like extensive family tree drops on the dragons. He just doesn't really care. Unless he's like very specifically making a point about like, this one dragon we know for sure is this one's parent. Other like there's not family trees for the dragons. But there's so few dragons left. They're all coming from the same 3. So like they're all interrelated.
That's true. Yeah. So there could be that like,
the Targaryens brought 3 over, did the conquest. Presumably they had some extra eggs, but for the most part, they're all coming from that one batch. So that's something to keep in mind. Ryan Condal saying that the Dany's eggs are Cyrax's. Like, do I like this story in Fire and Blood a lot? Because I like lesbians, sure. But like,
it's Condal said that those eggs are hers.
He said it very recently.
Got it.
That was the whole point of like, this is our family's hope for the future.
Yeah, with Rhaenyra.
So like, do I think it makes a lot of thematic sense for the show? Yeah, absolutely. Like, get that connective tissue to GOT. Go for it. Like, it's not a big change in my mind.
No, I agree. Shifting gears a little bit, we'll talk more about the claiming as it comes up. I think that, but specifically, actually, we should talk about Addam. We'll jump to the end to stay in the beginning. The end of the episode is so classic fantasy coded in the same way that Aemond's claiming of Vhagar was. Obviously, that resulted in a fight between children where somebody was maimed. So that was not a happy night. But for about 2 minutes, that scene was very classic Pete's Dragon or like hippogriff scene, like coded, of like, wow, here's your big wondrous magical experience. And I love that this sort of ended like by the trees with the face to face of Addam and Sea Smoke and everything. Like, it immediately was like, it's like Sea Smoke arrived and was like, whew, I found you. Had to kill a guy, but so glad to see you. Like you've been running. I was just trying to say hello. I loved it. It was very adorable.
Yeah, I mean, if I was like gripping my chair the entire time, the only issue I have, and I just wanted more. Just give me more.
Yeah.
Give me like even more, like you said, fantasy, like touching heads, touching the head, whatever it is. Like, give me a Buckbeak scene where he gets on for the first time and is like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I would have loved it even more if they did that. That might be a little much for this show, but
I wonder if you might get your wish, like with Rhaenyra flying off. It's like Rhaenyra's gonna be chasing him, and he's gonna be on Sea Smoke. Like, why is she chasing us? Like, how do I stop?
I really, that's the one thing that I'm like, I'm hoping the show, or I was hoping the show would tap more into it, because I do feel like that's, I don't know. I'm obsessed with dragons. I just feel like that love, that connection, that bond, that is really, really cool to experience. And I know this media is much more dark and gritty, but I still feel like that upliftingness of having that bond and connection to a creature as was said, godlike creature, right? I think that specialness is, it could be there, and I really want it to be in there. And I think we've had hints of it throughout Game of Thrones and obviously throughout House of the Dragon. But this one was one I really wanted because it was Sea Smoke, but I still appreciated it.
Yeah, Andy, how did you feel about the way that it's all framed?
I thought it was fantastic. I'm like, Addam should be scared. I thought his fear was really, really important to show. I think Stefan Darkland got a little too confident, and that's probably why things didn't work out so well for him. But Addam's very relatable. Like, dude, I build boats. Like, this is not for me. He's trying to run away. I thought that was great. I'm very, very excited to see them bond and become friends. Yeah. And I think it was badass that we got 2 new Dragon Riders this episode.
And this is also,
Mysaria being the second, just
yeah. So in the text, it's somewhat, I guess, ambiguous. I know there's fan debate in the text about whether or not the hulls are Corlys's or Laenor's. The show version is very clear now that they are Corlys's. I don't know, Andy. I've been told that
they're Corlys's. Like Fire and Blood doesn't spell everything out for you. You have to like be willing to squint and read between the lines. Yeah.
So in a sense, like, this is also Sea Smoke clocking like a real return to family of like, this is my uncle. Like, this is my half uncle. Hello. Like, Sea Smoke's like, I miss you guys. What happened? I flapped my wings and all the Velaryons were gone. Like, so it's
when Rhaenyra, when Rhaenyra was told about Sea Smoke, and she's like, yeah, he does that. Like, this is what Sea Smoke does. He's always around this same area, just missing home, man. This is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I loved all that. Okay, so continuing through the Team Black stuff, just because this is a very evenly spread episode of like every single thing got a little bit of movement. So let's talk about some stuff that is just a little bit smaller, to knock them out, just so they're off the agenda. real quick, I want to give a shout out to House Beesbury for not letting that shit slide. We don't need to see it, but knowing that it's happening is very satisfying. Because that deserved to be avenged tenfold. So good for them. I don't know if there's anyone that knows anything about House Beesbury. Please, both of you speak if you do. I don't know if they have even a role beyond this, but
I got no lore for you on House Beesbury. I'm sorry.
I want to imagine that they're awesome.
I remember them from the book, and I just remember being like, "Yo, that name. That's the name. Beesbury.
Yeah.
That's
Beesbury rocks." And then another, again, not small, but smaller, appropriately with the title SMALLFOLK. This is the beginning of and we're gonna separate the Mysaria stuff because it's twofold. There's Mysaria politically and Mysaria now intimately. So politically, Mysaria's plan is rather genius and very timely, I should say, because I mean, and this will always be a timely thing, is who's paying attention to the middle and lower classes. That is a thing. Spoiler alert for where we are, I guess. All Americans, everybody on this panel right now, Americans. And so like we can see sort of like this sort of, especially on a day like today, not to date this episode too much if people are doing a watch, but like seismic political shifts happening and the middle class sort of looking up and saying what's going to happen. Like, yeah, that's been happening here too. Shockingly, stories do reflect the real world, contrary to what YouTube might tell you. And when you have that initial scene with Ulf in the bar, I guess with a brothel in the bag, I don't know if they're connected, but they are having these conversations about what's available. Food's awful. And then you get hey, the whispers are starting, which is great. And that pays off in the gifts from the queen, which I thought was really well directed, well played, the banners and everything. But you know, no shade toward the people of King's Landing and Flea Bottom, but they're not great at like single file lines or being chill about anything. So this immediately exposes the darkness that can be bred by desperation. And I think showing Hugh sort of fucking knock someone out for the share that they'd already grabbed, you're supposed to feel, I think, a little bit uneasy. It's like, yes to this move, but also, ooh, it's exposing something. So whoever wants to jump in here.
I thought it was interesting that the people in that bar, when they were hearing the, kind of staged propaganda, they were not poor people. None of their clothes seemed that ratty to me. They seemed, like you mentioned, very middle class. And I think in Game of Thrones a lot, when we saw riots and whatnot, it did mostly seem to be the sort of like flea bottom, lowest rung of the ladder. And here, Hot D seems to be saying that, no, this is across the board. If you're not in the Red Keep, you are having a bad time in King's Landing right now.
Yeah, definitely equalizing. Like, these are, like, we got everybody from, Hugh's a smith. It's not like, you said, it's not like Hugh is a beggar. And it's not to say that what he did was wrong. I mean, his daughter is dying. So it's like, yeah, he's going to fight. He's going to fight for it. But the way that what it's saying is like, if you're not the Red Keep, which we'll talk about on a personal level later with the Hightower siblings, the Red Keep is a corrupting force, and like, look what it's doing, where it's going to make you fight each other. And it goes to show that even Rhaenyra's gifts, the scarcity is so strong that it's going to cause this explosion. And yeah, when it explodes on the greens, it's like great, but when the inner fighting happens, you're like, oh man, like, look what it is making Hugh do, and you don't even blame him. Andres, how did you feel about sort of the way that all shook out?
Andy, if you want to go ahead, man.
I just want to say, I'm surprised that Mysaria is putting the small folk at risk in such a manner, because it does seem that this plan relies on a lot of small people having a terrible day.
At least getting, maybe we saw someone lose their hand.
Yeah, if there is any moral grayness going on here, I think it's with Mysaria proposing this to Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have complicated feelings on this scene, to be honest. Just because, again, the blockade is supposed to represent, even Larry says it, desperation, lashing out against your current ruler, which, as they see, is now Aemond. So Rhaenyra kind of contradicting that, saying that yes, I'm, stopping this food from getting to King's Landing and this trade getting there, but I'm gonna give you guys some food in order to cause chaos and a riot. I just have complicated feelings on it because I'm really trying to decipher what the writers are trying to do with the small folk. And right now, obviously, we don't have a full picture because we don't have the full season.
Yeah.
But this on top of like, I know we'll get there. I swear. I swear I won't talk too much about it. But this on top of the Rhaena taking over Nettles thing also kind of rubbed me the wrong way because again, small folk, lowborn, these people having the opportunity. I mean, Nettles represented that opportunity to show someone literally doing something astronomical for someone. Someone of Nettle's stature, of someone of who she is and what she represents in her status in this world. And then on top of that, adding this scene to me was very confusing, I guess, because again, I just feel like there's a little bit of muddiness there. And I agree with Andy as far as like what Mysaria is playing at, because it feels like it's not in line with what she usually does. But again, first watch, I have to watch it again and I have to really decipher and chew on it.
And the picture, like I feel like it's a similar conversation to criticisms of Rhaenys in the Dragon Keep last season of like, yeah, you did this epic escape, but like how many people did you kill on the way out? And maybe the point is that they are the victims, maybe the point is that they always will be, which is very cynical, but like maybe like I wonder almost if it's like, is it ruthless calculus of like you brought up the blockade. Rhaenyra's blockade is here, and therefore some of this failure is to provide is on her. Of course, it's also on the Greens, and they make that point. And what is the calculus here? It's not to feed them. I almost wonder too if it's not necessarily to cause a riot inside the small folk, but it's like you almost have to think like, yeah, that's gonna happen. To me, what it was for Rhaenyra and from Mysaria's point of view is when you see those people running with Rhaenyra's flag from the boats and yelling, she's provided, like, gifts from the queen, like, long may she reign, like all that stuff. That's what they wanted. I almost wonder if there will be in the next two, like, I would like it if Rhaenyra and Mysaria have this moment of like, well, fuck, they weren't supposed to start, fighting. They were just supposed to celebrate, and that's naivety. That's naivete on Rhaenyra's part. But yeah, from Mysaria, it's like, should Mysaria know that they would do that? Did Mysaria underestimate the level of desperation there? Hard to say. But yeah, it is one of those things that's going to have to play in context. I mean, Game of Thrones, like you said, Andy, like the class disparity is extremely bad, and like even the crown is broke. And so it's like that the flea bottom there is decidedly scarier. Yeah. And they immediately jump to assault and battles and in the streets, and there's a little taste of that here. Yeah, it's an interesting point. And we'll talk about it some more. Boob says, when y'all say small folk, I'm imagining teeny tiny villagers like Gulliver's Travels. They'd have an easier time that way.
We should have more people in the chat who have never seen,
who have never watched it,
any of this, just to keep us humble.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's that. Obviously more with Hugh will come. It was a good character moment to show that like Hugh is a loving father. He works hard. All this stuff, but like this is weighing on him and turning him toward darkness in the way that it is for every other character too. Nobody is exempt except maybe little Joffrey, who's just taking a walk, which we should mention. The introduction, not showing them, but of Sheep Stealer, and this conversation with Lady Jane Eyre. Not much. They're establishing where the two younger kids are going. Great. This is the thing again. Like, we don't want to spoil or go too far ahead, but Andres brought it up of like,
sorry.
No. You're fine to bring it up. I just want to make sure that when I say what I'm going to say, that we don't spoil forward. I wonder. So there's a character named Nettles. Long story short, who's in the text, and by this point should already be there. And there's been conversation about are they going to use the character or not. And now it feels like they've taken pieces of the role for Mysaria and pieces of the role for Rhaena. We'll see. I haven't watched the after episode talk yet, or the House the Dragons Built, which will be out, I guess, tomorrow, or if not, if it's not already. So maybe it's talked about there. I'm sure there'll be interviews. Smartly, Condal does not do the post Star Wars weekly interviews with every outlet, creating discourse every single week. That's I think it's a wise decision when you're doing something with a fan base that pays this much attention to detail. Let it all ride, bud, and talk after. You could talk at Comic-Con or something. But I think that Rhaena, just for her arc, ignoring the real world stuff that we don't know yet, I like that she has this moment to speak to Joffrey, because you don't get a lot of the second and third kids communicating about what that means. And Joffrey's a little bit younger here than he is in the text, so I'm not quite sure how active he's going to be. But it was nice to see sort of that moment of just like actual humanity with her deceased betrothed's little brother. It was wholesome. I think it's nice to check in with them, and for Joffrey to get a little bit of characterization, because he's been just a tiny little toddler for most of the show. If anyone has anything to say about that, or Jane Eyre, or about anything with the two younger kids getting shipped off to Pentos, feel free to jump in. If not,
I'm excited to see more of Lady Jane. She is kind of a feminist icon in the book. She's very much like, if Rhaenyra can't rule because she's a woman, what's that say about me in my seat in the Vale? So like, she's a little more ride or die Rhaenyra in the book, and I'm hoping we see that evolution. And I'm fine if she starts from more of a hesitant place with like, you sent me puppies, and then seeing her kind of slowly get more involved with the cause. So I'm down with that.
Yeah, or Joffrey and his dragon, the only ones to stay in the Vale. So Joffrey, his dragon, stay in the Vale. I think location-wise, that's different than in the text. But
yeah, it seems like the plan is to keep Joffrey with Joffrey and the other youngest in the Vale with their two dragons, and then Rhaena and the youngest baby were going to go to Pentos, I think was the original.
Oh, it's just the youngest. I thought it was plan. I thought it was both youngest. Okay. All right. So just little Aegon then, or no, just little Viserys.
I get the little. If they don't have lines, I'm not going to remember their names.
Who's older, Aegon the younger or Viserys? I can't remember. Regardless, yes, they're shuffling some kids around, and yeah, you're correct. That dragon is the only hatched one that is there right now. Obviously, sheep stealer in the wild, living up to its name. Let's move over though, just for time's sake, because we're like 45 minutes into this, and I knew this was going to be a long one. Talked about small folk propaganda. We talked a little bit about Mysaria politically. Let's talk about Mysaria in the way that a girl kissing queen speaks about her girl kissing advisor, I guess. A couple weeks ago, I was talking to our friend Edgar in a group chat that we're in, and I said, not only just like from a chemistry point of view, but like I think it would make a lot of thematic sense if, to further emphasize what we all know to be true, and what Miguel Sapochnik has said, and Olivia Cook and Emma Darcy, and the younger Alicent and Rhaenyra, that everybody has been like, yeah, this is what we're implying. It is about repression. It is about this. But sometimes you got to handhold people to this character. It's not just your read that this character is queer. They are, and I think that it accomplishes that. So now maybe there are people who didn't get it, who aren't on the internet, and now when they rewatch season 1, they'll be like, oh. So there's that. But then I also think it makes a lot of thematic sense for both of them individually, which Mysaria's origin story, which is brutally sad, sort of tease up. Not that they have similar origins, but that in terms of having to stand on their own, in terms of defying expectations, in terms of understanding this sort of having to make yourself in a time of desperation. Earlier, she says, like holding the sword is becoming. And then the third thing is that I think it makes a lot of sense, since the whole show we've been playing up that Rhaenyra and Daemon are the blood of the dragon and they understand each other and they're both fire and blood, that they would be involved with the same person in the same way at different times. But it's like, yeah, this was the first person we ever saw Daemon with, and now here we are. After being with Daemon, Rhaenyra is now, to whatever degree, involved with this person sexually. Whether it continues, we don't know. But I like it. Anyway, whoever wants to jump in.
Go ahead, Andy.
All right, sure. I couldn't help but laugh because when my now husband and I were dating, I was in the closet for a year while we were dating, and we dated in secret. And one of the few places where we would meet up to see each other, because we were long distance, was at LARP. And I would have moments where I was making out with my boyfriend, and someone would come running into the room because we're under attack by goblins, or there's an evil wizard, or whatever, and like we would then immediately be like 15 feet apart from each other, like, oh my gosh, whoa,
yeah,
we were talking about gold, whatever the excuse was. So I was just cracking up at that. But then I started thinking more about it, where like her claim is so tenuous right now that like Alicent has already like so grafted Team Green to the Faith of the Seven, and we know that the Faith of the Seven is homophobic, that like, can Rhaenyra survive a religious scandal on top of everything else? So like the added weight that this brings, I think, is very interesting, and it's new for the show, and I think it's really, really compelling stuff. So I'm very excited about where it's going.
Yeah, go for it, Andres.
Yeah, that last point is something that I think is relevant, right? That it's new to the show, and that we have the opportunity to show this characters in these light. And I'll agree with you, Alden. I do think this was very much like leading the audience into like, yes,
this is a queer character. Yeah, it's not just your read.
I feel like that was the point of that scene for sure. But I also feel like it offers an opportunity for Rhaenyra in such a stressful environment to have this outlet and to have this stress relief, right? Where she feels this connection to Mysaria because of two powerful women, right? In this position, obviously Mysaria in her own way, but the fact that she can have this outlet and she can have this escape from this horrible reality that she's currently facing in with Mysaria made a lot of sense to me. And it also made sense as far as like, they're just vibing with each other. When she says like, it's becoming of you, I was like, that's like, it's literally like if you translate it to like now slang, and she's like, oh, you looking good.
Yeah, you got that shit on.
Yeah.
Like
it does feel like such a classic sapphic thing of like, let's both like immediately bear our like deepest, darkest traumas and then make out. Like that feels so...
I'm going to tell you my backstory. This is flirting, by the way. Like, yeah. And I also think contextually, like, yeah, Rhaenyra, queer character, confirmed now. The reads are affirmed, and great, like I said, for rewatches and everything. But another thing on rewatch is that when you look at Rhaenyra's relationships overall, like the people she's been intimate with, the people that have sort of defined this, there's a trend of these people not seeing her just as either the heir or now the queen. And I think in an episode with a conversation with Jace, which is like, they see me only as, a mother figure or like their daughters. And that's why they don't fear me. They don't respect me. She had to let someone know in this episode. She had to put something in front of the help, man. In front of everybody.
I laughed so hard at that scene.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I laughed so hard. I thought
it's
was
awesome.
Amazing.
It's awesome. So when you have that, and like they don't see my merits, they only see these diminishing roles, or if they do see As Jace points out, like, well, you are my ruler and you're my mom. Like, even Jace is like, well, even, I can't help but my perspective be sort of both. So sorry, but you are my mom, literally. I think Mysaria fulfills sort of what the other ones have too. And what I mean by that is when you look at Kristen Cole, even though he is Lord Commander of the Incels and like is the worst, before his like descent into darkness, he saw her as somebody that he could be with regardless of titles, away from everything. That was his fantasy. And like he really saw her in his twisted way, as we later see. And then Harwin, from second one, saw her grit and her backbone and her fire and her heart, dragging the boar into camp. And he was kind of like, okay, all right. And then Daemon has always seen her because he sees himself. And regardless whether it's good or bad, she wants that. And she had somebody here that has, the whole time she's been at Dragonstone, been talking to her like a woman, like a person, like somebody with that you can say, like, yeah, you look good rocking a sword, or good idea, bad idea. Like, I understand why you're stressed. Like, these are real conversations that she's not having with anyone. And I think that Rhaenyra is attracted to reality and is attracted to somebody that can speak freely in a way, because the tragic thing is that when Alicent was her best friend, like that's kind of what she had. Alicent was her best friend, like they were girls, not like it was a princess and my dad works for your dad. Like that's why they know each other, but that's not why they bonded. And it's tragic, man. It's tragic. And I'm already enjoying the memes. So shout out to everybody making memes.
I think it'll be very, very interesting if Rhaenyra does get another face-to-face with Alicent after this now. What will that look like? Like, we, the audience, have all been like contextualizing and looking at the Alicent-Rhaenyra relationship the whole show. But now that Rhaenyra has just had presumably her first girl kiss, is she now going to start looking back at her old situationship and wondering, like, was I neurons firing? Like, did I have a crush on Alicent Hightower? Like,
did I allow myself to think it? And
I'm really curious how Rhaenyra is going to reflect on this.
And we've also pointed out moments where, through a certain read of the text, which is now way more solid and way more affirmed, literally, Otto, when she says, I've sinned, and he's like, I don't want to hear it. Like, is that part of it? Because he ain't no fool, like he's probably been around the block. Same with like Olenna, a couple hundred years later, pointing out like, yeah, you all lords every now and then, like
Gawain is also gay. Like, there's no hiding that.
And I think they even kind of allude to Gawain's hardship. Maybe not in those terms, but like it's all baked, it's all baked in. And then also Aemond, like Aemond in the first or second episode of the season, like she harbors love for our enemy. It's like he probably doesn't mean it that way, but again, that's there for that rewatch for you to be like, like, and he ain't no fool either. I don't think he would know it because he was little and like didn't spend that much time around his sister, but all of that's there. All right, staying with blacks, and then we got to get into the green stuff. So we're jumping over to the section that I call Alice Rivers is media literate, and welcome back, Patty Considine, because
I'm gonna dip before the haunted.
Please,
I'll watch. So thank you.
You want to give a 30-second thought about Viserys before you go?
Oh my god, it was worth the wait. It was really, really powerful. I loved Aemond kind of replaying his sins and getting to like try again. I thought was really, really beautiful. And as someone who has like difficult is the word I'll use relationship with like my own family, I thought it hit really hard. So I loved having Patty back for it. I'm glad that they didn't overdo it with him, because it could have been 45 minutes of Patty again, and I would have eaten it up. But also I'm glad that they like used him sparingly so that it hit all the harder. It was fantastic.
Nice. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Andy.
Good
I
night.
love you.
Take care,
I will
y'all.
See you,
catch
Andy.
you next time. Starting with this, Andres, we get these visions. We'll sort of pair them together, and then we'll sort of talk about Alice, because Alice Rivers kind of points out that she is aware of the way things work. Like it's a burden, it's not a prize, and all this stuff, and how that connects to later. I mean, she talks about the reality of the crown and why it's better if someone doesn't want it. Later, Gawain Hightower talks about the Red Keep, so we'll touch on that stuff. But these two visions of Viserys, one in a very Rise of Skywalker way, of the dialogue being the same, but the deliveries being different, of whether it was Ben Solo and his father Han, and now the two brothers. It's still the same stuff from the pilot, when he banishes Daemon the first time. But then it's not yelling, it's more sorrowful. Like, he doesn't say, for your own rise, like Patty did in the first one. He starts to cry. And they both start to cry, and then Daemon runs. And then second flashback, it's like, okay, hit rewind again, go back even further to right when he's grieving. And you can't make it right, but you can know, okay, this is what I should have done. How did that all land for you?
Yeah, I've been having I was so gung ho about the first vision that we saw, and I was like, yeah, visions, magic.
Yeah.
And then I've kind of been losing steam on it because I'm just like, where are we going? Where are we
Yeah.
going? But this definitely won me back a little bit more because I've obviously Viserys. I think that's a key character in Daemon's life, a key person in Daemon's life. And yeah, I love the, like you said, line replay. I think that's very significant. The final one hit me really well, and I think it's opening an opportunity and a door for us not to get dragged down in the mud with too much of The Shining, like I'm going crazy, and this
Yeah.
kind of stuff, and tap into more of what's the purpose of this, right?
Mhm.
Where he is confronting this stuff and these issues, and the fact that he embraces Viserys in that moment. I really do feel like it's a time for. I mean, what was his line, right? He said I wasn't there in the moment,
Yeah.
like I should have been, but I
He's
am
like, I'm
here
here
now.
now. Yeah.
I was like, that's it. That's the line to really let you know what the purpose of this was, and really showing you that Daemon is having a different side to him. And I think that's fascinating.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think there has been questions. I mean, like, I've enjoyed every vision in and of themselves, but like a lot of people, I was like, okay, well, there needs to be an encapsulation. There has to be a bow, and like Viserys is the perfect bow. We've seen young Rhaenyra a couple times. We've seen Laena a couple times. We've seen a version of himself that's also kind of Daemon, and we've seen a mom that he didn't even really remember, and everything that implies, and all these things build until he can finally say very simply, paraphrasing, of course, I was wrong and I'm sorry. Like, that's what that scene is I was wrong and I'm sorry. Even if he, a Westerosi prince can't just speak the way that we would, like, thematically, it's just him realizing, like, oh, Viserys had needs too. It wasn't just about what I needed and what I wanted. It wasn't always an insult toward me. And I think saying to the specter of his brother, I wasn't there, but I am now. It's like, okay, well then what's your brother's legacy? Rhaenyra. Like, there it is. Like, you've realized now that you were wrong, and that what did your brother want? He supported Rhaenyra. Yes, it was complicated, and yes, even he questioned whether it was just to spite you. He did. We know that, but it's never going to be cut and dry. But you're doing the best with what you can do. And even though the hug broke my heart too, Jared, in the comments. It was beautiful, and it's a lot of tears in both scenes, and a lot of tenderness that you don't see, and the way that he wakes up and is processing the news of Grover Tully's death, while also coming out of this, and then breaks down once the conversation is over. I mean, Matt Smith is he's on 10 right now for everything that he's doing as an actor. But then that loops us back into Alice, who may or may not be causing these visions. Maybe it's the castle, maybe it's her, maybe she is the castle. Like, I love how intentionally vague she is. Like, her chambers are kind of out of place and out of time. She says she might be an owl. The book says she might be 400 years old. Like, nobody really know. But what we do know is that pretty outright implied that she murdered this old man. I love Daemon just being like, wait, how did he die?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how David doesn't know this stuff, bro.
Yeah.
Like, how can you not look at Alice Rivers standing in the middle, like, of that like little ruins of Harrenhal,
Yeah.
with the tree right there, with her dark hair,
Yeah.
just randomly, like you're not questioning, like, wait a minute, like I'm not into supernatural stuff, but whatever she's on is not natural.
No,
Uh,
100%.
so I just love her vibes. I think vibes are really important in the fact that she's giving off those vibes. Her knowledge about stuff, like the way she just spits it out like she's an encyclopedia, should alarm Damon. Damon should be like, wait a minute, like that is not like super. That's really rare for someone to show that kind of knowledge that quickly. And then obviously the owl coming in, the way that was shot was really cool. So yeah, I've been loving Alice so far.
Loved that. Yeah, she killed him. Jared asking, did she kill Grover? Yeah, all like 99% confirmation. And if she didn't kill him, she made it worse. And nudged him toward death. That's what she said. Just do nothing. And wait 3 days, and it'll take care of itself. And I also like that, because she's aware of his vision experiences. She's known what he's seen in each one. She confirmed that by bringing up his mom last time. She knew, all right, I'll go work on the Tully thing. But from her point of view, she's like, he hasn't had the breakthrough yet. Then he does have the breakthrough, and boom, suddenly good news. It's like, okay, things can fall into place now because you finally worked your shit out. And it's a great example of it is extremely different from the text. In the text, we know that it says that she had no effect on Daemon, but it's like, yeah, maybe in an unreliable history, I do not think that he's going to get back to Dragonstone and be like, let me tell you about my vision quest. No. So it's like, you could see why in history it would be buried. But it is really cool. So let's move over to the Greens. We'll go for a little bit longer. Not that there's less to talk about there, but we ended up doing like a half hour on Dragons, which I'm down to do. But it's Sunday night and I'm tired. So we're going to go through this stuff here. Right off the top, seeing House Lannister marching was awesome with the rains and the score. Jawadi's score, always incredible. But didn't that music just take you back and stress you out a little bit?
I love the Reigns of Castamere. I love it. I get hyped when I hear it. Just seeing Casterly rock, I was just like, here we go, man. My Lannister side is coming out.
And the fact that they roll around with lions in cages, it's like whether or not they control them and like can sick them on their enemies, I don't know, but it's awesome. Great to see that and how that plays into Aemond's rule. Like Aemond, definitely more capable than Aegon, but you can tell he's losing his patience, and he's the rage is coming out, and that leads to one of my favorite moments for Alicent in the show so far, which is have the indignities of your childhood not been sufficiently avenged. She's finally saying, look, man, I get that you were bullied, but how far are you going to take this? Because that's what it is for him. It's a revenge tour.
Yeah, I like that scene too. I liked it in part not just because of Alicent, but because of Aemond. Because again, we see him throughout the entire episode lashing out, being mean, being cruel. But in that one moment, there's like 2 seconds where he's like, "Okay, you're kind of right, but whatever. I'm still removing you from the council." Like there's a little glimpse in his eye.
He puts his hand up on her hand.
Yeah,
and it doesn't. It's not to remove. He gives it a little bit of a like, I'm gonna hold my mom for a second, and then, all right.
Yeah, he's like, "You're right, but I'm gonna keep doing it." Because that's actually why he's lashing out. And yeah, again, his cruelty and his rule, whereas Aegon's was more dismissiveness and more like brashness, where Aemond is much more being a little meaner and tightening his grip on what he has.
Yeah, and I to connect it to the scene with the brothers when he visits him, he's asking, "What do you remember?" But obviously, we know that it's underneath that. It's telling him, "You better not remember shit, man. You better keep your mouth shut, because right now I have the power. You're stuck in this bed still for a while longer. Just because you've woken up now doesn't mean that it's over for you." And leaving the sphere that the king uses at the small council meetings in his hand, as as a flex, but a flex that to everyone else would look probably like a little nice thing, I think was really smart. It's like, oh, here's your sphere back, buddy, but just remember that I'm the one carrying it around.
Yeah, that's how I took it as well, where he's very much showing people like, I just visited my brother to give him a little gift, just like help make him feel better.
Yeah. I'm trying to boost morale, make sure he's comfortable on the way out. That was great. I really, really liked all the stuff that's happening with the two of them, and I think it allows us to highlight a dynamic that maybe not we specifically or even fans overall, but like the show is so much about the two factions that we forget that part of the poison of the family is also inside of each faction. It's not just Daemon Rhaenyra fighting in Team Black. Like Green is not a unified house at all. There's way more infighting in Green, and it all comes from a place of insecurity. And when when Alicent says like the insufficiencies of your childhood, and she's got her hand on his face, like of course our eyes are drawn to his eye patch, and so we're like, oh yeah, it's revenge against the Blacks, and it's like it is, Lucerys taking his eye, and like yeah, it is, but it goes on. It was also his number one bully was his own brother. It wasn't just them. Like, yeah, the eye is the encapsulation, but like Aegon and Jace and Luke all laughing at him when they were kids in those earlier episodes. It's like it's always been there, and he shamed him to the very last second before Rook's Rest. He was shaming him like in the brothel. Like it's always been this guy at home. It's always at home first, before it is at anybody else's house. So I thought that was really interesting. Stick with the high towers. This guy Gwaine, man, the only Green who I consider to be a cool guy. He's the he's the only Green that's like legit. He's just a knight doing knight stuff, trying not to get too wrapped up in Cole's bullshit. I thought this was a beautiful, tender scene to give him a lot of characterization, sort of deepen it, like Alicent pointing out to the audience, like, don't forget that, like, you've been seeing me this whole time, but like that means my brother was not here and was not getting attention from our father after our mother died. So he was growing up in Old Town alone, just with uncles and being fostered. So there's that element of it for him. But then it moves into a conversation about Darren, who we've yet to meet, which I thought was beautiful because it shows you how desperate Alicent is to know that it's not all of her kids. Like she really wants to know that one of them turned out okay.
The one that's not with her.
Yeah, which she even knows. And he's like, oh, I think it's the Red Keep, which is a good point. Like it is being powerful. It is being isolated, powerful, told you're great, and never having to work for anything and never having to want anything. And being able to abuse power. That's true. But she's also right that it's her and Otto, but her.
Yeah, I love this because, again, like you said, the direction of the episode showing you that she's there to talk to Kristen, and then her brother's like, hey, what's up? And then she like says, oh, maybe I should just pretend to talk to my brother. And it ends up turning into a much more heartfelt conversation. And the way they're hyping up Daeron is insane. Like, I'm loving the way they're doing it because it's like this hidden character that no one is seeing, and yet they're hyping him up. I think it's really cool the way he described him. I was waiting for him to say brave in that moment, but I'll have to wait for another episode. But yeah, it's a great moment, and I do feel like it shows a different side that there might be a different side to the Greens.
Yeah, I agree that there is humanity there that maybe could be if it wasn't for certain machinations. Like she's always grown up under the thumb of Otto, who they've now set up and hyped his return in 2 different scenes, which is great because we've missed Rhys in this show because his performance, he had his best performance right before he left for the rest of the season. And it's like, give us more. So excited for him to return. Glad that's been established. Lets people know where the players are. But yeah, the description of Darren that he just as good with a lute as he is with a sword, and like he's out there playing songs and having girlfriends and being well liked, and he says all this stuff, and then Gwaine realizes what she's asking, and then he says, and he's kind. Like that being the last thing, he's like, oh, I get what we're talking about. You're not asking me specifically about Darren. You're asking me if any of your kids are good. And it's like, yeah, Helena is, but like Helena has her own tragedy to her of being different than everybody in society. So it's like she can never connect with her, and that's part of their tragedy too. And that's part of the small folk scene that we already talked about, is seeing once again Helena can't leave the Red Keep without some sort of pain. But for Darren to be like Alicent's hope of like, oh, okay, yeah, he's good. He doesn't write to me anymore, but like at least I know he's okay, and like maybe I'm the problem. It's like there's that line in Succession of like maybe the poison drips through. Like that's it. Like he's good because he didn't grow up with you and your father. Speaking of the poison dripping through, he's back. He's back, baby. Nikki's here. Nikki and Andres, you guys have been on together before at the same time, but probably not in a while. I don't think.
I don't know. I don't know if we ever have.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I thought maybe season 1. I don't know. In any case, if you're meeting for the first time,
Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you too. Awesome.
Nikki, I knew you were going to be coming in later, so you don't have. We're not going to be like rapid fire recap of every single thing you thought, but we're talking about the Greens and the Hightower conversation where Alicent is asking about Darren, but the subtext is, am I capable of having a good kid? Is that even possible? How did that play for you as Gwaine realizes what they're talking about? She's being more upfront about what they're talking about. Kristen lurking. Kristen like, I'll ask about me. But
yeah, that was a great sort of subtext of that scene too. But yeah, no, I really like this episode in terms of, I think Alicent's always really fascinating when she gets those cracks of like discovering her humanity. Yeah, I mean, like the scene with Aegon too, where she finally says something like real to him, and even that she's like almost bubbling to get, and so yeah, I think watching her like sort of go from that place of sort of end of season 1 where she was sort of running the show for Viserys and sort of following that through in season 2, and how things are just constantly getting taken out of her control. Like that's sort of like her and Otto, when they teamed together, they were like, look, we're the 2 adults in the room. we can wrangle everybody. And I think just watching her lose that control that, she was able to exhibit in the past, and then sort of the effect of that being like coming to terms with like, am I like, can I do any of this in terms of like actual humanity? It's just super fascinating. And I think I really love those moments for her, because it's just like, yeah, it's such strange, like it's a strange place for her to be for herself. She doesn't really know what to do with it.
Because you almost wonder emotionally,
yeah,
would it have been better if Gwaine was like, oh, Darren, nah, he sucks. Like that honestly, though unfortunate, might have been like her like exhale of like, okay, maybe it isn't me. But the fact that he sounds awesome is like, no, it is. He's really well liked. He's kind. He's musical. He's talented. Girls love him. Like, he's smart.
I like how he throws the bone of like, maybe it's the place, which I think is true.
Yeah, we touched on that as well. Like,
yeah,
they are both correct.
It's not like all an Alicent issue.
Yeah,
because I think it is just sort of the seat of power.
Gwaine and Alice Rivers, and 2 different storylines, have sort of come together to tell us they watched Game of Thrones on HBO, and they understand that like it is the seat, it is the place, it is not a prize, it will corrupt you, it is a burden. And King's Landing, yeah, like we've seen what it has done to. We talked about sort of right before you joined, Nikki, like. Have the indignities of your childhood not been sufficiently avenged? And it's like the bullying and everything that he went through. It's like that is in part because these are people that never had to want for anything, and
Mhm.
grew up in a seat of power and could just do whatever they want. And like they bully Aemon when he's a kid with a pig, right? So it's like
Mhm.
you can imagine that Aegon was probably just like snapped his fingers, servant, get me a pig. It's like they don't even question, like the place does facilitate this.
Yeah.
But
I just watched that episode like 2 days ago also.
yeah,
And
yeah, it's awesome.
it felt good, you know, in context of sort of where they are now. Yeah, it just sucks. Like it's like I think almost more than Thrones as a story. I feel like House of the Dragon really just like makes you realize how like different these people could have been if right, like
there's
like,
a lot
if
of like
everything was different. Yeah,
a lot of pivot points. There's a lot of
yeah,
you know, if Viserys put any effort into Aegon, it's like, you know, because I loved him, I missed him. You know, I clapped Nikki when Patty showed up. I was
beautiful.
That was like, you know, the dark, sad, depressing version of like you know, and when someone returns in Marvel, and you're like, yeah, it's my fave, and then you're like, oh wait, he's grieving. Like that is not a happy scene, but it, you know, his flaws and Alicent's flaws and Otto, like that's the tragedy of, you know, in Lord of the Tides, of like their final dinner, of like you can see them having a meal together, but it's too
I love
far
the
gone.
idea of somebody. I love the idea of somebody like just sort of turning the TV off. And House of the Dragon ended great. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like that's just like the end for them. They're
That's
like,
so
you know,
nice.
that was beautiful. They all came together. Love it. Oh, he died. Oh, that's sad. But they all love each other now. Yeah. You should have stopped there. But yeah,
100%.
for sure. It's a lot. These poor people go through a lot.
We got one more big thing. Okay, Andres, sorry. So Andres is gonna get out in a couple more minutes. Andres, I want to get your thoughts then on the last, I would say, big character exploration of the episode, which is the opening of the soul of Larys Strong, of Larys finally, as Mysaria did in her scene, getting into his origin story from his point of view. Finally, like Larys has always been, how does everybody else see him? Now we got a little bit of how Larys sees himself and what it means, and relating it to Aegon. How did you feel sort of about what is obviously a manipulation, but is also true?
Yeah, no. The scene, obviously, the first scene was hysterical. Obviously, the way Aemond just like takes him down for no reason.
He just dog walked him.
It's like, you're right. You should be hand to get the other hand. It was like just especially mean in the way that Larys is like, all right, you're my enemy now. I'm gonna go talk to your brother. We'll see how he's doing. Yeah, it was interesting because at first you think Larys is there to kind of like maybe twist the knife, which he kind of does in his own weird way. But at the same time, he reveals like, he's like, no, you don't get it. Like, I get where you're at right now. But as long as you still have your mind, being a capable person is good enough. So when he says, I need help or help me, I really do feel like Larys is like a little touched in that moment. And he's like, okay, maybe I will help you. And discovering what his childhood has become of him, what has created him, similar to Aemond. But now facing off against Aemond in this way is, yeah, it's interesting. I'm super curious where they're going to take Larys this season and the future as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I think that again, he can only weaponize where he's come from. Like it at no point does it like Tyrion does too, to a big degree early, but Tyrion also over time like uses his experience as an ostracized individual to like try to come together. And you know, and by season 5, 6, it's like he's helping lead a crew of ostracized individuals with Missandei and Grey Worm and everything. Larys, he is not capable of that. Larys cannot do. He can't do anything with the way he's been treated. Then, you know, destroy. Then or satisfy his own desires like he does with, you know, his season 1 foot fetish stuff. That's the only way he can process it, and that's what he has in common with Aemond, is that they are both on a revenge tour constantly. And I think that's why Aemond clocks it real quick. Like Aemond's like, that's a great idea. I agree. I do need a hand. Not you, but because
He's
I
all like
see
a toad or something.
yeah, toad.
Like, yeah.
yeah. That's fantastic. Like, and then, oh, it's even brutal too. And he's like, "My lord, it would be an honor." He's like, "I'm not asking you to do it. I'm asking you to write my grandpa."
Yeah, it was super mean. It was like high school bully type mean. It almost like I forget the exact line, obviously, but it almost felt like he named him the hand. He was like, "You can be a helping hand to go get me the hand."
Yeah.
So,
Aemond was in his room like, I nailed that guy. That was awesome. Ace, I don't know if you have anything else you want to throw out that we didn't get to at all. Feel free. And then, I mean, I'm not rushing you out, but I know you have to go. So
yeah. I again, complicated feelings on Rhaena. I love Rhaena, but I just feel like
if that is the Nettles
it
replacement,
it feels like I've seen, again, this is TikTok and Game of Thrones TikTok, House of the Dragon TikTok. I've seen Black women talk about the specialness of Nettles, and I think that would have been special. And then curious to see where they're going to take the angle of the small folk, Hugh, Wolf, that kind of stuff is still kind of, I'm still questioning it and seeing where we're going. But everything else, I think I got out.
I would say with to your point, with 2 more, it feels like, oh, we're decompressing. Like, I think like we're really decompressing in a good way. I think that a lot of us thought, again, no spoilers for people watching or listening, when I say the word gullet, people immediately know like, oh yeah, that's another big one. And I think we thought like, oh, the season's gonna end there. I no longer think that. I think that it seems like, and there's
that's what I thought too. I was like,
there are some shots
to end there.
There are some shots, but I almost wonder if that's going to be a season 3 opener instead of a season 2 ender. So
it's not like out of the question, but it is getting tighter.
It is, yeah.
It's like the
it's
window's
like,
getting tighter. Yeah.
It's like, we only did 1 of the dragon seeds in this episode, 1 attempt and 1 success, and like 2 more to go. And like so who knows what they do? Maybe next week is the training montage that I thought this would be. But yes, is season 3 confirmed? Yes, it is. They are writing it and in pre-pro, so that is coming. And how many seasons there are is no longer. It has not been outright said. I think only George R.R. Martin has said he's pretty sure for on his blog and stuff. So, Andres, thank you so much, my friend. We'll catch you next week for Addam and Sea Smoke fly around for an hour, and it's very happy.
Yeah, I might be at Comic-Con next week.
Yeah, that little thing.
So
that's right.
I'm gonna be super late to watching this episode.
No, yeah. If you make it, great. If you don't, no worries. We'll catch you after.
Yeah. Either way, shout out Sea Smoke. I love you.
Yeah.
Man.
Absolutely, man.
See you guys. Have a good night.
See you.
Yeah. Take care.
Bye.
So throughout, before you got here, we covered a lot. I want to use the last minutes so that you can jump to the things you're most excited about. And I will start this by saying, and then take it wherever you want. I almost texted you, but I didn't want to text during the show. But I almost broke that rule when the episode started with the Reigns of Castamere and them literally having lions in the fucking crew.
I love that you said that, because that was the first thing I was going to say. You were like, so what are you talking about? I put on my lion shirt. Not quite a Lannister shirt, but I dragged out the lions.
Awesome.
Man, that was satisfying. I wanted to say that, like, I have missed the Lannisters. It's very strange being great, but also strange being in Game of Thrones and like them not being the bad guy house, right? Yeah. Like, or the high really towers
being like A players. They're like 1B, B level. Yeah,
barely part of it. Like, obviously Tond is in the business, but it's like Jason obviously had a great season 1 episode, one of the best episodes of the series. And I think I've missed the Lannisters so much, and hearing that music, seeing that armor, not quite where it is in Thrones. It's gone through some evolution by Thrones, but still so similar. And then we travel with a lion because we do.
And I love that, like, in a good way. I had a thought of like, I'm not sure about that lion. Do they do it for style, or do they actually sick that lion on people, or do they throw people to the lion? And like all of
I'd
them
say it's
seem
only style
Lannister.
points. Yeah, like to me, at least for Jason Lannister, only style points. Like
Yeah.
this man, I feel like this is the kind of thing Tywin is like never again. No, this
It's a
does not
waste of
happen.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like we do not flaunt. Like
Mhm.
we just kill people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have missed them though, and I think that is also like again, one of the delights of this series, both as books and then the show, and then even just the histories in general, being able to play with houses and being like, oh, this is a cool fray actually.
Yeah.
This is a fray you're not gonna get. I don't know if the
Yeah.
Boltons ever get that. Maybe I don't think so. But I don't think there's
given
ever a cool
given their
Yeah.
sigil and everything, I think they always suck.
Yeah, they've always kind of sucked. Yeah, and just like again, like the High Towers play very little role in Game of Thrones. And now it's like here they are, that antagonistic house. The Valerians, they're minuscule, but which is in part probably due to the stresses of of this conflict. But it's like, yeah, it's just so fun. People sort of like, it's almost like a little bit musical chairs in terms of like who's sort of running the show here this time.
Right.
And in Thrones it was this Baratheon, blah blah blah. Now we're gonna let some others sort of go for it, and in terms of like now it's like Blackwoods and the remainder of Strongs and High Towers Targaryen. So yeah, it's just again it's a fun aspect of sort of being able to do these kind of stories in Westeros.
Yeah, absolutely. So where does your sort of heart go with this episode in terms of other stuff, things you want to touch on before we start to wind down? Favorite scenes, favorite moments?
Yeah. I really did. I felt a lot happened still. Like it was longer, I think. But one of those longers that you don't really know, like he's sort of like in it, so it's like time's just going. But I think it was longer. I don't know by how much, but yeah, it like a lot was going on. I thought the again, just the focus on the small folk is, as the title of the episode indicates, like something that is a very different change of pace from Thrones, just in the way that like the regular people didn't play much role in Game of Thrones. Like you can think on maybe count it on one hand the like meaningful times you check in with the rangers of the city or the
and like we touched on it with Andy when Andy was on, like they're also at that point the crown itself is broke, and like therefore what was a normal city street is it's all flea bottom. They are way grosser, way more disgusting. It's way more just like a in Game of Thrones. Like they're not characters, they're more of a hazard.
Right. And now I feel like sort of or in general, I feel like the unrest plays a bigger part. And it's almost like playing like the old, or not old, but like the old ones I played, the like Total War games, where it's like you have a city, and depending on like how it's going, the like civil unrest meter rises. And I feel like that is how just King's Landing is. That meter is playing a role, and it will continue to play a role because obviously book readers will know things that we will eventually get to, but it's like their participation in this conflict is much bigger than it was for Thrones. So I think that's I think always been a fascinating angle that the show has done more than Game of Thrones did, and I think it's gonna be. I don't know. There's like scenes I can like imagine, and like they're just gonna get like crazy. in terms of how they like depict the small folk. But yeah, just we know sort of the ones we focused in on with Hugh and Ulf and all them, and the brothel owner. I think she's the owner. Just having these people to check it, and also agent of Mysaria. Is that correct now?
Yes.
Because she's like, man, all these rich people, huh?
The Greens, they're eating a lot. Yeah, that was great. I love the way that played. We talked about that a little bit earlier too, of like how it's such good like follow through on the plan, and I love the visual of the boats of the different care packages and everything. Like that was smart, and it speaks again to how this show, and Game of Thrones did it too, of course, but like the War of the Five Kings is like way more chaotic and way more based in immediate, like we're gonna go fucking kill that person. Like whereas this is, per Otto especially, a game of optics and PR in a lot of ways. And part of it is again who is in charge. Like War of the Five Kings is like, oh, you think we're gonna get tact and PR expertise from Joffrey and Balon Greyjoy and Stannis? Like this is not gonna happen. So
Stannis's one PR statement was
the one true king.
Pretty banger. The classic Jamie line. Jamie Lannister. But yeah, no, totally. It's look, it's like we don't necessarily like how he does things, but you can disagree with Otto a lot of the times. Like he reads the room correctly.
I said this, man. They sent Rhys packing for most of the rest of this season after his best scene, and hearing him mention again that he's coming back, it's like it really is like an adult, even though you hate what he's doing. They make you miss some sort of presence. Like I am now him missing Viserys, his forbearance, his dignity.
I've been watching a lot of season 1 in the downtime, as I sort of like alluded earlier, and just especially those early episodes when Otto is like, when he's status quo Hand of the King and like things are pretty rocking, and he's like, man, I got all this down, I'm in my flow. Like Daemon's annoying, but look, I got a little daughter, and she's gonna be great for the king. It's gonna be awesome. Like, I do miss that Otto. He was very put together, and I think Rhys plays the little more frazzled Otto just as well. But it's he's fun. I'm looking forward to seeing him again.
Absolutely. So any last things you want to talk about? And then before we go, I do want to get your thoughts on Patty finally coming back like we wished for.
I'll just touch on some little things. Shout out, unfortunately, to the late great Stefan Darklin. I think he gave it a good shot.
And he was so like humble about the opportunity too.
Yeah, I was worried at first that they'd be like, "So Stefan, you gonna do it?" And it was much the opposite, where he was like, Rhaenyra was like, "I'm not like making you, but if you want to give it a shot, this is the thing." And yeah, I think reading the books, people who have read them or read Wiki and Fire will know that it's actually Stefan Darklin who snuck out of King's Landing with the crown of Viserys or Jaehaerys, both. He's the one who snuck out with the crown and brought it to Rhaenyra. So in the books, he already has that on his resume. I remember when reading it, watching that guy who did this incredible moment then get toasted. It was one of those like pit in the stomach things of like, oh yeah, we're in Game of Thrones. It's like the epic things don't always see themselves through. And I always thought George did him a little dirty. So changing that to Eric, I think was a better choice, and then allows this story to not quite have that same like, oh man, like that
Yeah.
happened to that guy.
And
'Cause
also
that guy was
just
a
like
real one.
in terms of fleshing out your supporting cast, like spreading the wealth a little bit of stories.
Mhm.
Like I was saying with Andres, like the very understandable and real concerns about Nettles, if she's cut, if she's not cut, they still haven't said. We don't know. But it
Yeah.
does definitely seem like they've taken her part, chopped it up, and given pieces to Mysaria and pieces to Rhaena now. We'll see how it goes. But sometimes that is, you know, you step on toes with that. But sometimes, like this, like you're saying with the the Kingsguard, it's like, yeah, we should be fleshing out different Rhaenyra loyalists, and giving
Mhm.
them characterizations and different moments that we can point to. Sometimes that moment is, what happened with Eric. Sometimes that moment is what happened here with Darkland. Sometimes that moment is getting pimp slapped in the middle of the hallway. But no one will ever forget
Brutal.
that Lord now. No one will ever forget him.
Nope.
That was his moment.
Yeah, no, I yeah, just another thing, like, because another example of what they did with the Kingsguard is like Darkland was the one who went with her to King's Landing, which
Yes.
is not a book storyline. So it's like, yeah, they definitely fleshed him out. He could have been like, again, it's perfectly Thrones, right? Like he could have been her number one guy. I think he was her Lord Commander of her queen. Oh no, maybe, yeah, he was. Then it's the bald dude, Marbrand. Yeah, he could have been like her number one dude, like for the whole series. But this is Thrones, and you gotta roll the dice on some of these people.
Yeah.
So yeah, a noble effort, a good try, but yeah, it definitely is unfortunate, but Addam gets the winner in the end, and I think they hint at it in the like future, the next episode, they hint at in that scene, in that clip of sort of that feeling of, okay, Laenor made sense, Laenor Velaryon made sense, all the Velaryons make sense because they come from Targaryen blood through Rhaenys. What's this guy doing? And sort of like this, this undermining of Targaryen sort of like right to rule is going to be interesting, because it's like, I think Jace has it in the clip, the line where he's like, well, what does that mean? We're fire and blood. Like, now anyone can have a dragon. So
Yeah.
I think, that's going to be a fascinating thing.
We'll talk about it more
of that.
next week.
Of this episode, I feel like those two things are the number one, like the small and the future of the dragons. That's sort of what.
Yeah,
I think.
And it's interesting because it's like, you start to get into those nerdy conversations of like, well, they still are Corlys as kids, and that's still old Valyria, and so like, is that what it more so means?
I think
like,
that's probably
like
goes. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's the or maybe that'll be. I mean, I don't want to get too much in the future, but maybe that's what will get Corlys to be like, they're mine. Like, they're mine. I admit it. And then Maury comes in. I don't know. But yeah, and then before we get out of here, for Viserys, just because I love talking about him, and you and I were excited, Andres, everybody was excited, like, oh, they're gonna do a Patty thing, we got 2 Patty scenes. I've already said sort of what I have to say about them. If you want to talk about this moment, and I will tee you up with, I already told Andres that it's very Rise of Skywalker in a great way, of like, we're gonna play the same lines in that first scene, but Patty's gonna deliver them all differently, and it's gonna play totally differently. Like lines that he shouted in the pilot, he says here on The Verge of Tears. Loved it.
Yeah. No, it was special, and it was gonna take something special to bring him back too. Like, we knew it was getting there, right? I don't think there's many people who would have been like surprised that Viserys was the ultimate I assume ultimate vision. And yeah, no, it was a special scene. It is. I think that's a great shout talking about Rise of Skywalker, because it's like a similar thing. And like, okay, if you're gonna put Harrison Ford on the screen to bring this home, like it's got to be a meaningful scene. And I think that's another great example of them doing it to such a great success. I love that. I love the second scene probably more, because I think that's something that people really can relate to, like, more directly. I mean, there's got to be so many instances of people regretting things, and having those specific thoughts. So the ones that keep you up at night, of like, why did I not say this to this person? Why did I not do this with this person? And I think that was so relatable. And again, like, just personally, me having watched those early season 1 episodes very recently, like, it's a very like heavy hitting sort of juxtaposition between that scene of Daemon. Yeah, where was he? Like, he was at the funeral. Where else? Was he ever anywhere else? No.
And this is before the funeral, because this is them being prepared. So it's like, this was like, maybe after funeral you go to the brothel and that's where you make your mistake. But like, man, before, you were home. Like, it makes like you didn't even go down the fucking hallway. Like, like, it's heartbreaking. And I said this a little bit, with Andre. So I'm, for podcast listeners, you might be hearing this again, but if you're just joining us now, I know Jen's here. Hello. This is a great point too that Jen brings up in the comments about this episode was all about brothers. Yeah, it is in a lot of ways. I mean, even the absence of a brother. Jace is always defined by the absence of Luke, and we get to check in with Joffrey as Joffrey is kind of becoming more of an active character, like having a dialogue.
Shout out to the little baby dragon also. Shout out to
little baby dragon is awesome.
I forget. Is that Tyraxes? Oh no, it's the little kid's dragon. Tyraxes is his. So it's the other kids. I forget their.
Yeah, I'll look it up. But that, I mean, obviously, Aemond, Larys is in a lot of ways. His biggest sin was taking out his brother, and then of course the brothers here and the Hulls, and their dynamic and their different destinies, and so that's a great point. And
taking their realities in such different ways too.
Yeah, of like,
I thought that was a really interesting conversation.
Their station in life has affected them so differently. And I think and Corlys is realizing that. Like, Corlys is like, oh, they're not just gonna jump at a chance for glory. Like, not everybody operates in glory as currency. In the way that he does, and the way that maybe he subconsciously expects them to, because he knows that there is. But yeah, this Daemon thing, I was saying to Andres, like, it's, and if you could translate it into our language, it's, I was wrong and I'm sorry. And I thought maybe what this was building to was, I think I said it last week, like, we're going to get Patty saying, I love you. And it's like, well, deep down he knows it, right? And so it's like, now that I've seen this scene, I'm like, oh, I love you was not the answer. The answer is outward facing. He knows Viserys love him. It's what did you not say, not what it was say.
It was less about like what he needed from others, and more what he knows what he did wrong, like what he messed
exactly up. And the way that it plays in context is like Alice pointing out that he always runs, Mysaria always saying it's more likely that he just disappears on you than betray you, like all these things. And here he is, first scene, dialogue repeats, tries to run and is locked in for a few seconds and then finally falls through the door. This scene starts with Viserys alone and he shows up willingly. It's the first vision that he's arrived to in a willing way in terms of the blocking and the directing, and Matt is just like out of this world. I mean, a cast full of people that are incredible. You can depend on Emma Darcy, Olivia Cook, and Matt Smith to do work that in a just world would be sweeping every award show. He's amazing. And the way that he consoles Patty's tears, like panning down to Aemma and they're, I don't know, does that baby have a name? The baby who passed?
Balon. Yeah, Balon.
Oh, little Balon. That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For his dad, right? For his father.
Mm-hmm.
Father. Yeah. And so panning down to them, I think also is like the visual language of like, okay, you're here for Viserys in your soul now, in your hypothetical. Ooh, okay, we're showing you visual, like this was family. Who's the remaining member of this family? What is Viserys' legacy? Where is Viserys' crown? Etc. 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 It's time to step up. And I think that the waking up to, I will say, a masterful blend of tragedy and comedy when he wakes up and he's hold back the tears, get the update, and then the glimmer of mischief of like, how did he die? Like,
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then breaks down after.
she tried so hard.
Yeah. Yeah, that was excellent. And I think that I touched on it earlier, but like Alice's specific language of like, wait 3 days and the winds will change. It's like with the full context, it's like she knows what she's gonna go do. But she also knows it'll time well for the final push. Like House Tully is ready to be treated with now that you are ready to actually lead. And how those things have to synchronize. I thought that was great. And yeah, I think, I mean, again, one of the, if it's, I always want to confidently say this is the best show on TV, and then I remember that The Bear exists, but they are both that for me in different ways. They tickle very different parts of my brain.
It's House of the Dragon and then The Bear consort.
Yeah. Yeah. Consort. Everybody keep making your fan cams and everything, please. Already the Rhaenyra girl kisser lesbian memes are spectacular, and the episode hasn't.
That was an interesting. I'm sure you guys like touched on it, but like that was a really interesting development to get into.
Yeah,
I don't like much to say because it's one of those things where like, let's see where this goes. But yeah, just super interesting, and it's like satisfying because they have a vibe, like they just do, and
they do,
and it's something to do with again, just that like Rhaenyra having that like in the documentary, they're like, we needed an actor who epitomized punk rock, and so we hired Emma, and so it's just like that oozing into Rhaenyra. It's like doesn't surprise me at all.
Not at all.
Not a shocking turn, but it is really interesting.
The point I'll remake the point just as we close, just for anybody that's joining now, is like I love a choice that works twofold, and I love a choice that works threefold, and like especially if it's like for the text and everything. Like point one, the subtext, to quote Giles from Buffy, the subtext is rapidly becoming text. Like it is no longer ambiguous about whether or not this is a queer character, and all of the reads that the fans have had, but also the actors, all four Alicent and Rhaenyra actors, and Miguel Sapochnik have all been like, yeah, that's how we were playing it. So like that's all there now. Boom, boom, boom. This is a queer person, and those metaphors now will be more evident in a rewatch. Then we move over into the other level, which is the way that Rhaenyra has been seen by people in general and her lovers. And like there's always that connection, even with shitty Cole, then to Harwin, then to Daemon. These are all people that saw her and not necessarily a princess, you know. So like there's that, and I think Mysaria's origin connects well. So like adding Mysaria to that very weird lineup of lovers is strong and powerful. Like that's like good job,
Rhaenyra.
Yeah,
you're pulling quite the crowd in.
Rhaenyra pulls across the class boundaries, and will make someone forget their vows. Well, like she's just
class, gender,
impeccable
status. Yeah, it's Rhaenyra reaches all.
And then the third point is season 1 goes out of its way several times, especially in Driftmark, the episode Driftmark, to emphasize that Rhaenyra and Daemon are the blood of the dragon. They're blood and fire. They understand each other. They, in ways, are a lot like each other. Rhaenyra says, like, he's what I always wanted to be. a man in that way. People point out in episode 4 when he brings her to Flea Bottom, to the brothels and everything, she gets so excited when someone says like, he called me a boy and like all that. Like she's always had this gender relationship with herself, the duality, and with Daemon as sort of her gender envy and just her person envy. And so, yeah, of course they're attracted to the same person. That's the third part of it for me, is that like, of course they end up independently. It's not even like Daemon is present for any of the storyline. They independently come to the conclusion that they want the same woman, which I think is fascinating.
That's a great touch in that she initiates. Like they're both a little snuggly, but like Rhaenyra's the one who goes for it, and I think that again also plays to the fact of like her feeling so coddled and being held back and just all these things. Like this was one way in which she's like, oh, I can act. Like, you know, like I can go. I'm not being held back by a council in this room to you know, to make out with a baddie. So
yeah. And then last thing unrelated that I just want to throw out because you're here. Last season, you I know were somebody who made the point, and you enjoyed, and I agreed with you, that the how cool it was that Aemond claiming Vhagar was so like fantasy coded and like classic, but like with a dark twist. Sea Smoke chasing Addam is sort of that again, but finally good. Like it's like the daylight, the from Sea Smoke's point of view, it's like that's basically his uncle. Like he could smell the Valyrian. Like that is his rider's half brother. So it's like, oh my god, a Valyrian. I just burnt a guy because he didn't smell right, but here you are. And like, hey, and in the forest, the face to face, like very rarely do you get something that is like this world playing it straight up. Even though things always go south, you know.
There's also a little thing that I loved about it, similar to when we talked about Cyrax in the premiere. They just like animated Sea Smoke really funnily when Sea Smoke just like crashes in when Addam thinks he like found peace, and Sea Smoke just like boom, crash. What's up? I love that scene. It was really funny, and fantasy coded in that similar way where it's like you're just sort of inherently like ready to cheer for it, which is why the Aemond Vhagar one is so weird, because it's like the kid is bullied and like can't get a dragon, and you know he's the one who tames the epic legendary dragon. Like such a like on paper, I'm riding for this guy no matter what, and it's a brilliant twist that up. But yeah, this one was the one that is a little more satisfying, but again, book readers will know really great story awaits these two.
Yeah, and to your point about like that classic sort of paradigm, like that one inverts it, of course. Like we want, as you've pointed out, you know, with Game of Thrones, like it is always cripples, bastards, broken things. And the fact that we you know, he didn't become a broken thing until after he claimed Vhagar, but he, you know, it's like he becomes this classic fantasy hero boy for about 5 minutes before it goes south. This is also that. This is a bastard. This is no one. This is just for everybody else's perspective that's not Corlys, a random crewman that's just working, and that they can be a part of this and step up is really cool. And I think we're endeared to those characters, but like, which to your point is why the Aemond one is so disturbing. But Addam sort of this gave me similar feelings as to like when Samwell takes out a White Walker. Like regular guys,
stumbling into heroism kind of thing. Literally on his back.
You know, exactly. So that's gonna do it for us tonight. We actually went the longest on this one, which I felt like we would, because it was so, like I said earlier, it was so even. Like we're gonna advance everything in this one, and every character is gonna get a character moment, and even the people that aren't on screen are gonna get stuff like Otto and things like informing sort of more about his house. So thanks everybody that joined us. Jared, Will, Jen in the comments, for Andy, Big G, for Andres. Nikki, if you want to let everybody know where they can find you. I started putting everybody's handles here just in case I ever forget, but you can point it out to everybody.
You can find me there on the screen on Twitter or whatever it is now. And in lieu of plugging things, I don't have anything to plug. I just want to plug the show and shout out the shot of Cyrax exiting the like little dragon hole and like diving down a cliff, and then that was dope. So yeah, that's what I'll plug.
Cyrax got the memo that war is coming. Cyrax saw Rhaenyra with a sword and was like, "Oh shit, I gotta step it up." Like Cyrax like, "I gotta do some cool stuff."
Is there dragon breathing when Rhaenyra is holding the sword? Did you hear that? Is that in the mix?
I don't
always just assume
remember.
like you can hear dragons snoring in Dragonstone like all the time. I gotta check again, but it would be funny if Cyrax is like right there when Rhaenyra is like.
I gotta check that out. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Cyrax just like over the bookshelf. Like,
what you doing?
Follow Nikki and Aquitius. Check out Imperial Senate Pod. Nikki will be back whenever he wants, but for the last couple, I'm sure. Unless he's got to do something cool, like go see John Williams or something, although that already happened. As for me, that Alden Diaz, THATALDENDIAZ, Casterly Talk, at the top of the screen, you'll see it there. Those listening on audio, Casterly Talk, CASTERLY Talk. That's everywhere. Ken, I've spoken to him. Obviously, this is still his channel, still producing. He still handles the audio uploads and the podcast side of the production and everything. And when we talked doing Anytime with Ken and Alden, which is Fridays, 11 Pacific, 2 Eastern, he said that he's probably in for the finale and potentially a season wrap up as well. The schedule's pending. So you will have Ken Knapsack returning from his expedition. I don't know where, I guess north. He would really like it up there. So I'm going to say that's where he is. But for right now, we will catch you next time. Thanks everybody for joining us. If you see this, on repeat or on social, give it a retweet. Let everybody know what you think of the discussions. Leave comments down below. We love talking about this stuff. We'd be doing it whether we were on air or off, and that's why we continue to do it. So for right now, I have been Alden. This has been Nikki. Thank you so much, and we will catch you next time for the penultimate episode of the slightly shorter season of House of the Dragon Season 2. Goodbye.